What's up, y'all? It is Tasha. We are back. It is Wednesday again. I swear Wednesday come around so fast when it's time for Married at First Sight. Like, how is hump day here again? But I digress. We are here again to review Married at First Sight, y'all. Season 14, episode 14. Y'all know the drill by now. Like, comment. Most importantly, subscribe if you keep coming back to watch me every single week. Just hit the subscribe button. It doesn't cost you anything. It's free. Believe it or not, it's free. Just click it. Okay? All right. Let's jump into the episode this week because I have a lot of notes because a lot of ish happened tonight. Okay? So let's jump right into it. It is 13 days until decision day and it's time for a couples retreat. And I'm like, yay. Insert sarcasm. Yay. Not excited. Y'all already know. From Hurricane K last season, it's about to be a whole mess at this retreat, okay? So they're only going for 2 days. Most people, especially, of course, the women, are packing like they're leaving for 2 weeks. Olajuwon says, hopefully I'll still be a husband when we get back. And if Katina has any sort of sense, she will leave him right in Vermont and come back home alone. But I digress. So they take a road trip to the cabin. Michael says that him and Jasmina have made a lot of progress, but they still have a lot of work to do. And I'm like, it's only 2 weeks left, sir. So I'm not sure how much work you expect to get done in the 2 weeks, but it's 2 weeks left. So shit'll get off the pot, okay? He asks her what she thinks they need to focus on. And she says building a deeper connection. And he asks what that means. And I'm the same thing. I've been saying this, I feel like, for the past few episodes. What does that mean, Jasmina? This whole deeper connection, what is it? And then he asks her, and then she says, it's just a feeling. I call BS, Jasmina. Like, no. So he asks her where they are on a scale of 1 to 10. She says they're right in the middle. Michael asks her if she needs to be out of 10 to say yes on decision day. And she says, no, I don't have to be out of 10, but I have to be past the halfway point. And I'm like, so basically she's going to say no. And I feel like every week in some sort of fashion, when he's asking her about decision day and she kind of says where they are and where she needs to be in order to say yes, it's something that is pretty much unrealistic with the time that they have left. So I feel like any opportunity she has, she's basically dropping the hints that I'm not going to say yes, Michael. I'm trying to get you comfortable with me saying no because that's what's going to happen on decision day. I'm going to say no. Whew. So Mark and Lindsey get to the cabin first. They are racing to try to pick the best room. Next up to arrive is Michael and Jasmina. Steve and Noi, we then see them riding in the car. He asks her if there's anything more she needs from him. He feels that they have made some headway. Steve says that they still need an understanding on the social media thing. And I'm just like, how many times are we going to talk about this? Like, last week, Noi was not interested. She says, it's her social media is what she has to say, blah, blah, blah. So why are we continuing to beat this dead horse? Because it sounds like a change that she is not willing to make. So you either let her just continue to be reckless in her social media by herself or you let her be reckless and shut up about it. Like, it's either one or the other, Steve, at this point. Noi tries to say it is Steve's perception about the post, and she tries to act like, the things he's bringing up wasn't really about him. And I'm just like, Noi, what about this don't you get? Like, this happens every single day in social media. Like, people don't necessarily have to be talking about their spouse, their family member, their friend, any of that kind of stuff. But you have to be more self-aware to know that you have gone through this experiment of marrying a stranger. You're getting to know him. And if you're posting these subliminal messages on social media, it does not take Bill Nye the Science Guy to figure out that maybe you're talking about your brand new husband that you really don't know that well yet. Like, even if you don't mean it that way, 9 times out of 10, people are going to take it that way because of the situation that you're in. Like, I really am having a hard time understanding why Noi doesn't understand that and why she can't at least scale back. Like, you can post some positive affirmations or things like that, but maybe let's just, keep the negative subliminal messages to a minimum, at least for now, until y'all get a little more footing under you, okay? She says, it's freedom to really express how she feels, and, he doesn't have to be okay with it. And she's like, you're just going to continue to have a problem with it. He's like, we're going to continue to have a problem with it. She's like, no, you will continue to have a problem with it. And again, Noy's not ready to be in anybody's marriage, child, because you being real childish. Like, quit being passive aggressive and really listen to what this man is saying. I don't think in this instance Steve is being unreasonable by any means. Like, for you to just not post these messages on social media that could be perceived as if they are pointing towards him, in which they in fact are. Like, stop it. So they show up to the cabin. They have to fake the funk basically around the other couples because Noy says she doesn't want to fight. Katina and Olajuwon get there and they're like, wow, this is nice. Like, they acting like they ain't been nowhere before, y'all. They acting like they ain't been nowhere. Olajuwon is like, oh, this is a mansion. I'm like, if you don't shut up, this is a freaking cabin. Like, act like you've been somewhere, okay? The girls go outside to enjoy the hot tub while the guys cook. Well, while Steve cooks. Steve asks how things are going because, he always got to get the party started. Mark says everything is good. He was like, well, for the past 3 days, everything's been fine. And for Mark and Lindsey, that's progress. He says he doesn't know quite yet if he'll say yes or no. Then when Jasmina asks the ladies, of course, Lindsey acts like she is his savior and his life has been in complete shambles, child. And thank God I am here. And I'm just like, Lindsey, you just like to rescue people, and then so that you will have ammo to throw in their face of like, hey, remember when I saved you from this? Remember when I helped you do this? Remember when you couldn't do this without me? Like, that's the only reason why you're doing it. I know in the beginning they, came off with you having like this big genuine heart. And while I kind of sort of believe it, it's more of like a 25-75 for me at this point of you just do it so that you'll have something to come back with of you doing something for them. So then somebody needs to do something nice from you. Jasmina says Lindsey's a bit dramatic, and she is, and she's just not sure if they'll stay together either. Mike says that he and Jasmine are in a good place. He just wished they would have gotten there sooner. And Steve kind of talks about them, dipping and coming back up. And, even that is still progress. And Mike was like, no, we can't dip right now because basically if we dip at this point, I don't think we'll be able to make a comeback. And I do agree with that with Michael. And I'm sure he's being very mindful of his words and everything with Jasmina as to not rock the boat so close to decision day. Jasmina says she isn't sure how they'll do on decision day because basically they had 1 month of really not talking, and then this month has been good. So, she's supposedly hopeful, and they're treating every day like decision day. And again, it's just complete lip service coming from Jasmina. Steve talks with the guys about the social media issue and Noy's subliminal messages to get their opinion. Olajuwon tells him if it hurts his feelings, then she should stop because Steve thinks, there's really no middle ground, and it's hard to give her feedback without upsetting her. And he just doesn't know if they can overcome it by decision day. And like I said, I agree. There's really no black and white to this situation. It's either you're going to keep doing it or you're going to stop. One of the two. So the couple's prepared to eat dinner, and Mark isn't eating any pasta because Lindsey has been annoying this man about his diet constantly. Then she just starts laughing uncontrollably, guys. Like, uncontrollably. And we all know how annoying Lindsey's laugh is. And everybody is just looking at her awkwardly. And it's just getting even more annoying. And I'm like, this is typical Lindsey. Like, anytime they're in any type of group setting, she has to put on the show. All eyes have to be on her. And if they are not on her, she's going to say or do something to then get everybody to shift their attention to her. Like, I don't get her at all. So now Olajuwon has to ask how everybody is doing. And I'm just like, can we please stop doing this? I feel like every single week we ask how people is doing. We check on people, and it is the same stuff every single week. Like, I'm sick of hearing it repeated. We all know what's wrong with these couples. We all see the red flags, even though they acting like every flag looks green in their eyes. But it's like, we see it, we hear it, but can we just move on and stop rehashing the same old stuff? Like, bring it up. Experts come in. Y'all need to deal with it, and we need to move on. But for us to keep talking about this same stuff on episode 14, it's going to be a bit much. It's going to be a bit much. Steve asks Noah if she wants to talk about the social media thing, and she's like, no. And he's like, why? And she's like, I just don't want to talk about it. And Steve is like, well, I just kind of think it's odd that you'll go to express this stuff on a social media platform, but we can't talk about it in front of the other couples. And she's like, she feels a bit ambushed because Steve kind of just, dropped this information out, and knowing that she really doesn't want to talk about it. And I'm like, you don't want to talk about it because you're going to look foolish in front of all these other couples, because they just going to be looking at you like, we'll just stop posting the subliminal messages. Case closed. And it's, quite frankly, it's that easy, Noah. It's that easy. So they all get ready for bed, and Steve is still want to talk about the social media issue. And again, just drop it. Noah isn't budging, so let it go. But he isn't trying to go to bed angry or with any issues, so he still asks her to cuddle and hopes that they'll have a good day tomorrow. It's 12 days until decision day. They each all have activities planned for the day. Michael and Jasmina will see a medium, and he's a bit nervous about it. And she thinks it will be good for the both of them because she doesn't want him to just do it for her. And I'm like, well, read the room, Jasmina, because he doesn't seem all that interested in going to talk to a medium girl. Lindsey wakes Mark up being annoying as usual. Like, every time I am seeing interactions with her at this point, I'm like, she is a lot to deal with. Like, can you imagine having to deal with somebody like Lindsey every single day? That has to be so exhausting. Like, I couldn't even be this girl's friend. Like, that has to be so exhausting to deal with her type of attitude and demeanor every single day. Like, I feel so sorry for Mark. Mark is not perfect by any means, child, but he got some kind of something on his side to be able to deal with Lindsey most days and not want to slap it out of her, because that's where I would be every single day with her, y'all. So she's like, I'm up early and I've been trying to wake Mark up for the past couple hours. And I'm like, girl, if you're the type of person that's up early on vacation and everybody else trying to sleep in, go outside, drink some coffee, read a book, go exercise, go cook and get breakfast ready for everybody, or just try to take your butt back to sleep. Like, but don't be annoying everybody else who's still trying to rest, especially your husband, girl. Anyway, they're going to be doing sound bowls, and he's like, oh, I think you could use it because you could calm down. And of course, she does not find this funny, and the light switch goes off on Lindsey yet again for her to act crazy. And I'm like, girl, you could clearly tell that Mark was joking. Why are you taking this so seriously? But she just says he just continues to take digs at her, and she doesn't find it funny. And I'm like, we don't find a lot of what you do funny either, but you continue to do it. And again, you've annoyed the hell out of this man until he's, woken up out of his peaceful slumber. And then you gonna get mad when he got something to say. Like, if you just would have left him sleeping, he wouldn't have had nothing to say, Lindsey. Girl. So, Katina and Olajuwon, they go see some animals. He has a shirt on that says, I'm talking with you, not at you. And I'm just like, well, is this for us, or is this for you to remind yourself as you have conversations with your wife? So they go see some alpacas, and one of them starts bucking up on him. And I would have loved to see this alpaca jump on Olajuwon or even spit. Because don't alpacas like to spit at you? Or is that llamas? One of the two of them, I think, like to spit. So I wish one of them just would have gave it to Olajuwon real quick. They end up seeing a little baby alpaca that the man said was just born 15 minutes prior. And then they actually get to walk an alpaca. And Olajuwon is in the confessional. Can't even remember the animal that they're walking or that they have. And I'm like, typical. And I'm just like, other than muscles, what does Olajuwon actually offer? Other than muscles and a receding hairline, what does Olajuwon offer? Because I don't see no emotional connection, no physical connection. I'm sure he doesn't stimulate her mentally. Like, What are you bringing to the table, sir, other than muscles and a receding hairline? Let me know. So of course he loves seeing her with the animals and it turns him on. And I'm like, Olajuwon, get out of my face. Then they go on a little picnic and he asks what else she wants to experience. And she says for them to have a deeper connection. He says how, and she says to talk about their future. And he's like, because you do want to have kids in 2 years, right? And she's like, yeah. And then he says, well, how much time do you have left in school? And she's like, 2 years. And he's like, well, kind of, you don't think we need to rethink that timeline? Because I just don't understand how you're going to have kids and then you're still in school. Like, you really need time to, get your career established and things like that. And I'm sure, I don't know what school Katina is in. I'm assuming it's like to get a master's or some sort of higher degree, because I think she already has a decent job that she probably would need to have a bachelor's degree at least to get. So I'm confused as to Olajuwon acting like this girl is an undergrad with a job at McDonald's and she needs to, get her footing before she gets her first big girl job from graduating. Like, what? And then he has to say, I've spent the past few years really establishing myself, taking care of, school and my house and everything. Like, all that is good. And I know, you're going to be working up to that. And that's okay. That's okay that you're going to be. Here he go again, acting like she is beneath him. And this is the same thing Dr. Pepper was just talking about last week that you got mad at. But you are here displaying the same behaviors yet again, Olajuwon. Like, cut it out. I get what he's trying to say about having kids in 2 years. You finish school in 2 years, blah, blah, blah. But there is no perfect time to have kids. As long as y'all can communicate and work it out and figure it out, have the babies and be quiet. He gets on my nerves, y'all. But he just continues to play Katina like she is ditzy and dumb. And sometimes she does play into it. And I think some of it is her just like trying to keep the peace with him, because she knows if she bucks back, it's just going to get completely worse for him with him. But it just gets on my nerves so bad. And because of him saying all this of, I like to travel and we can afford to travel and we can afford to travel, multiple times a year. And I want to do all that. I was like, what does this man do again and how much money does he make? So I was petty. I went back and I was like, okay, he's a municipal wastewater operator. And I'm sure it's a respectable living, y'all, but this is Olajuwon, so I got to be petty. So I go to Google and I'm like, a municipal wastewater operator. What is the average salary? Average salary is between $45,000 to $64,000. He out here acting like he is making well into the six figures as to, why he can take multiple trips. He got his school paid off. He got his house paid off. Well, we don't know what these things. We don't know if the house was something that was given to you. You just paying taxes on it. We don't know if you went to school and you had most of your school paid off by football scholarship or something, and you only had, a few $1,000s in student loan. Like, quit acting like you are doing so much better than her when we don't know all the history that entails you being able to pay off that stuff, Olajuwon. Cut it out. Anyway, Steve and Noy go to like a little amusement park. They ride like a little ski lift type thing. And then they ride these kind of bobsled type things down a large slide. It actually looked really fun. I wouldn't mind doing that. Then they ride some other rides and it's cute enough with the two of them. She says it's important for them to continue to carve out time for them since, basically in the beginning, they did not get a chance to date. They just went right into being married. And then now Steve has to bring up the social media thing again. And I ain't talking about it again, y'all. I'm over it. So we see Mark is now outside making a fire in the fire pit. And Lindsey, I guess, is talking to him at this point. So she comes outside. She comes down and says she isn't happy with him because it's hard for Mark to understand how he has hurt her. She finds him being more negative than her. Lindsey, do you hear yourself? Pot, meat, kettle, girl. Pot, meat, kettle. Like, you bothered this man over and over that morning for him to wake up. You said it yourself. And then when he wakes up and makes one joke, you get super annoyed. She says she doesn't think he is aware of it. And he thinks less of her when he speaks to her that way. And she thinks that he does that to make himself feel better. And I said, if putting 20 on 10 was a person, it would be like, how did you gather all of that from him making one joke about the sound bowls making you calm or something like that? Like, that was the joke. It wasn't even funny, and it wasn't even that serious, Lindsey, for you to be doing all of this. Ma'am, sit down. She says she thinks he's intimidated by her, and when she is feeling good, he kind of has to bring her back down. And I'm like, the delusion and grandeur, the delusion that this child. Michael and Jasmina go see the medium. She asks what she can do to help them. I'm like, ain't you the psychic girl? You supposed to already know before they walk into the door. Michael says he's open to anything, and she says she really likes to help people heal. She immediately begins to call out a time in Michael's life. She said, maybe about 3 or 5. And of course, that's the time when his brother passed away. And she asked about there being, a 13-year difference. And Michael is kind of taken aback. And he was like, wow, yeah, it's a 13-year difference between us. She then tells him that his brother is connecting to him through his dreams. And then she asks him kind of about prostate. And he says, that's how his dad passed away. And Michael is now, of course, getting emotional as they're bringing up kind of all these emotions. And Jasmina says she's a little bit afraid of how this will affect them after they leave. And I'm just like, Jasmina, girl, what did you really expect? Most mediums do bring up and communicate with those loved ones that have passed on. This man has had lots of death in his past. So you knew she was going to bring this up. So why are you confused? She tells him that she sees twins in his life in the next year and a half, and then starts talking about them living somewhere sunny in California and then getting a boat. And I'm like, girl, you had us for like that first 60 seconds, and then you started talking a little crazy and reckless. Like, I don't know if I believe all this nonsense, okay? She says that Michael loved Jasmina at first sight, and of course, Jasmina's loving that. Jasmina said that they only have 2 weeks until decision day, and the lady says that she feels that they belong together and they are good for each other. She says that if they don't stay together, Michael won't find somebody else for like 5 years. And I'm like, you might want to go ahead and take your chances with that, Mike, because you might not have sex with Jasmina in the next 5 years. So, hey, pick your poison at this point. But then she says Jasmina will find somebody in like a year and a half, but the guy won't be as good as Michael, and she'll kind of regret not staying with Michael and being in that relationship. So we'll see. But I don't know if I believe everything she had to say. But I'm just so confused as to, like, we keep having to have Michael relive these extremely traumatic experiences of his childhood and his life. And we continue week after week to really get nothing about Jasmina. Like, at this point, what do we know about Jasmina except for that she couldn't date nobody locally, and her mom and her dad left her, and her stepmother basically adopted her and her sisters and raised them. Like, that's all we know about Jasmina. But yet she continues to want Michael to just dig deeper and relive all this stuff over and over again, as if this was not traumatic experiences for him. She is getting on my nerves, y'all. So Lindsey and Mark do the sound bath activity, and I already know Lindsey gonna love this. And I'm like, you need all the zen you can get. So sit down, pipe down, and be quiet. She says she felt the energy of her grandfather, and it was comforting because he was really important to her. And we look over at Mark as the man is wrapping up, and Mark is over there taking the nap of his life, honey. She says that her grandfather was a difficult man, and she's like, now she has Mark. And I'm like, well, what about yourself? Because you're pretty difficult to deal with as well, ma'am. Let's not forget you, okay? So next we see all the couples get together. They have a little field day in which Jasmina and Michael are facilitating. They in their little matching shirts. It's cute. So they break into teams and they play Flip the Cup. And Michael, Jasmina, Steve, and Noah are on a team. And they are called the Grave Diggers, but they end up winning Flip the Cup. So next up is kickball, and the other team, who's called the Undertaker. So with the other couples, Lindsey, Mark, Katina and Olajuwon, they win kickball. And then last up is dodgeball, and Noe falls before the game even gets started. But anyway, the Gravediggers end up winning. So yay, game's over. They all settle in for pizza, salad, and drinks, and they're getting ready to play the game most likely. And Jasmina and Mike are dressed in another cute little matching t-shirt situation. It says, one says better and the other says half, and it has avocados on it. So, child, they a cute little moment, but they still ain't gonna stay married. They not gonna stay married, but let's get into this messy game of most likely. So, first up was most likely to have cosmetic surgery. Noe got that one. Most likely to be the best liar. My vote, Olajuwon, but Jasmina gets the most votes. Most likely to spend the most money on their partner. It's a tie between Olajuwon and Lindsey. And then she again starts this uncontrollable laughter because Mark had actually put himself. And I'm like, you have not really probably given this man a chance to even be able to splurge and give you these nice things because you keep tearing him down every chance you get. Anyway, the next one is most likely to be a stay-at-home parent. Noe says she really wants to do that. She wants to raise her kids. And Lindsey's like, so working moms don't raise their kids? And Noe's like, no, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I would rather be home with them. And at this point, we can obviously see Lindsey has had too much to drink, because now in her confessional, she's saying, oh, so you're going to be, a stay-at-home mom and y'all going to have a one income household, because over here is a 2-income household and her husband doesn't even have a job. And I'm just like, can y'all stop giving her alcohol? Please stop. I know it's good TV, but it's exhausting for the viewers. Please stop giving her alcohol. So next was most likely to lie to their friends about the sexual relationship. Mark puts Lindsey's name down and Jasmina asks why, and Lindsey says, it's because I tell him it's good. Once again, she's reckless and embarrassing this man in front of everyone. But yet, the second he says anything, even if it is a slight joke, she gets all pissy and upset. Like, Lindsey, you cannot have it both ways, darling. You can't have it both ways. If you don't want him to say anything negative about you when you get upset, you have to practice the same thing, girl. And if you can't control your mouth when you get alcohol in your system, stop drinking. It's sounding like you might need to make a visit to AA if you feel like you can't control it, girl. And I'm being dead serious, child. Anyway, most likely to start a fight is the last one. And of course, Lindsey wins hands down, and she should not be shocked at all. And she still continues to drink. She continues to pour more in her cup. And Mark already knows this is not going to be fun to deal with after. She says she doesn't care what anyone thinks about her, and she's rising to the top of her life, and they better take notes. And I'm like, Lindsey, girl. Mark is definitely, I really hope he's going to say no on decision day. For the sake of his mental and emotional well-being, I hope this man says no on decision day. Because I'm just like, you can see all in his face how he is bracing himself for the storm that is going to be Lindsey after all the other couples disperse and he is left alone with her. So now we see Lindsey is outside by the fire. She is pissed at the world, and then she comes inside and says Mark walked away because he wants to be a part of production. And we are sitting here as the audience like, what the hell just happened? So Michael says he left for 2 seconds, and then when he came back, they were in a whole fight, but this is on brand for them. Mark tells us that he was outside. He put some logs in the fire. And this child was pissed because he used some of the kerosene that was hers to start the fire. And she said that he crossed boundaries. What alternate universe is she living? Anyways, after she says that, Mark then says she grabbed his arm like she always does, and he tells her not to do that. And of course, she gets upset, comes back in. I'm done. Okay, Lindsey, you say this every episode. So she tries to come down where Mark and Mike is, and Olajuwon stops her. And then Mike gives Mark the awful advice to go talk to Lindsey because it's not about the kerosene. And I'm like, we already know it's not about the kerosene, but Lindsey really has to deal with how she reacts to things. And that is some internal work she's going to have to do of why everything is a trigger for her. Like, every single thing is a trigger for her, and she needs to know how to deal with that, because you cannot continue to operate like that in life and in any type of relationship with everything being a trigger for you and you reacting to that. Girl, cut it out. So he climbs into bed with her and she starts crying, and he asks her why she's crying. And she says she was talking to Olajuwon about the game, and he tells her that basically he could see that Mark was hurting and that his energy had changed. She says she doesn't know how to honor Mike while still honoring herself. And then she has to once again tell him that his life is falling apart. And, you know, since she's met him, and it's just like he's saying it's not. And he doesn't need to keep telling her things. She doesn't need to keep telling him things like that. And we can all agree that you don't have to keep saying his life is falling apart. Like, she's like, it's just a pattern that I'm seeing with you. I'm like, you haven't known this man for a full 2 months yet. While the two things that have happened to him are pretty major with, you know, his job, I guess, sort of kind of laying him off, not necessarily fired, because basically saying he can come back after the show has been finished filming. And then the bed bugs with him being evicted. Like, I just, like, you just acting like every turn there has been something tragic happening to this man where his life is falling completely in shambles. Mark does not look like his life is in complete shambles, girl. But he leaves the room. And then once he leaves, she's kind of throwing herself under the covers, saying it's going to be so easy to say no on decision day. And I'm like, well, go ahead and say no now and let us all out of our misery, Lindsey. Okay? Thank you. It's now 11 days until decision day, and Lindsey says she woke up at 4 a.m. and she hasn't been feeling well and she needs to go to urgent care. And I'm like, maybe alcohol poisoning? Who knows? So, of course, Mark holds nothing against her and drives her to the urgent care. She says she isn't doing well. He has to pull over the car. She jumps out like she's about to throw up. And I'm just like, child, all I can think about is the other couples at the cabin are probably happy to get a freaking break from Lindsey and Mark. So, Lindsey was supposed to make breakfast at the cabin, but since she wasn't feeling well, Jasmina pitched in and cooked. We see Noah and Steve dressed alike in their leopard fit, child. If you remember the leopard little moo that he gave her, I think on their 1 month, he now has a leopard print shirt to match. So they matching out here. As they were talking, Noah says that they are still working on their trust, and she isn't sure if it's something that they will have resolved by decision day. And Steve says the same, and that only comes with time. Katina says that her and Olajuwon need deeper conversation, and Olajuwon says it gets deep and ugly, but there is love there. But of course he has to say, but I ain't in love, it's just love there. And that, oh, you know, she's just such a strong woman, and I love that about her. And I'm like, yeah, you love that because you can continue to beat her down. So you just want to know if she'll continue to be able to bounce back time after time. Right, Olajuwon? Women are tired of being strong all the time. We want to be soft. We want to operate 100% in our feminine energy, but we need men that we feel secure in that will allow us to let our guard down to be there. We don't always want strong to be, oh God, I love her, she's so strong. We don't want to be strong all the time, Olajuwon. Newsflash. So Mike says he feels Jasmina is really looking out for him, and he really didn't realize that until they talked to the medium, and she starts to cry because he just realized how much he trusted her in that moment. Really having her there was comforting to him. He says that he saw her be compassionate in a way that he hadn't seen her before, and they actually hold hands for like 4.5 seconds, y'all. It was a little bit cute. So lastly, Mark and Lindsey finally get to the urgent care. They have her hooked up to IVs, and 30 minutes later, she is better. And apparently she was dehydrated, of course, from all the alcohol, Lindsey. You can't just keep drinking wine and not drinking no water and nothing behind it, child. That's not how it works. So all the couples head back home, and Steve wants to talk more about the living arrangements post-decision day. And I'm like, she already said she didn't want to live with you. So what more is there to talk about, Steve? But I'm finding it hard to focus in this whole car confessional because the engine of Steve's car is so freaking loud at this point. But anyway, what it boils down to is she is projecting her past relationships onto him. She basically moved to Boston for her last relationship, and kind of after that didn't work out, she kind of had to reestablish herself on her own all over again. So she kind of wants to keep her apartment more so as a safety net, that if things kind of go astray with Steve, that she will not just be left to kind of have to rebuild herself all over again. And I'm like, again, Noah, you're going to have to deal with that, sweetheart. You cannot keep bringing your baggage from past relationships into new relationships, honey. You got to let it go or just be by yourself. Okay? That's all I got for you. I don't know what Noah wants at this point, but I'm almost convinced it's not marriage that she wants. Companionship, maybe. Marriage, no. Anyway, next week we see that they're going to be visiting their childhood homes. And I'm like, Jesus, poor Michael. Hopefully he do not. This poor man, the amount of times he's had to deal with bringing up the death and grief that he's experiencing, I'm feeling very sorry for him at this point. So we'll see what shenanigans come next week, because it looks like Olajuwon's going to be crying as well, which I have zero sympathy for. But, we'll deal with that when we get to it next week. Until then, please drop down in the comments below. Let's chat it up as we do each and every week. And I'll catch y'all next week. Peace.